Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Well, hey, friends, and welcome back to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. I am your host, Martine Williams, and your Chief Encouragement Officer. I'm super excited for today's episode. Another Turquoise Talk guest. You know, I love bringing on other mompreneurs to share their stories, to share their motivations, to share the mess before the success. Like, it's just really inspiring to me to meet new people. And there's so many people I've met because of this podcast that I would never have met before. So today's guest is Marissa Rader. I said that right, didn't I?
Yes, you
sure did. As I was saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I'm saying it wrong. Anyway, so I'm so excited to have you on the show. And so for those that don't know you or know anything about you, just tell us a little bit about, you and your family and how you became a mompreneur.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to connect on here. I am, like you said, a mompreneur, and I started dabbling in business when I was working full-time as a teacher. I was a kindergarten teacher, and I just knew that as awesome as the teaching lifestyle can be for moms or families and things like that, it wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. I am a very competitive person. I'm a very driven person. And yep, cool, test scores, all those things. That was awesome, like super, but there was no acknowledgement or recognition for going above and beyond.
Right.
And my only option for advancement was to become an administrator, which I wasn't really sure that that's what I wanted either. And so I just started thinking, okay, what is it? Like, what do I want for my life, for my family, for our lifestyle? What do I really want? What do I envision this life being? And being in the classroom wasn't it. And so that was about the time that I had found out that teachers were blogging and making resources and building these businesses and eventually leaving the classroom to do this stuff. And I was like, super sold, built a website that next weekend, started a blog, started creating teaching resources, attended every conference and class and course I could get my hands on to, refine my skills and learn to build this online business because I was going all in on it.
Right.
And I had a 5-year plan to leave the classroom. And in year 3, the pandemic hit. And I was teaching kindergarten from my kitchen table for 3 months. And I just was not sure that I could go back into a classroom where so many unknowns were happening. And I didn't know if I was going to have to sacrifice my beliefs and my thoughts and feelings about things to abide by other people's rules for this. And I just wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. And in the meantime, I started talking about teacher mental health and how this is not just when we talk about reopening and doing all these things, that this isn't just the kids that we need to be worried about. It's the teachers, because if the teachers can't share manipulatives between kindergartners and they have to wipe a surface down in between every kid that comes up and talks to them at their table, that's just added stress and work and things that teachers did not need added to their already full plates. And so I started talking about it. My administration did not like it. And they said, you're done running your business. They had a policy that said, you can choose. You can teach for us or you can run a business, but you can't do both because we can dictate your secondary employment as our employee. And I walked out to the car. I called my husband and I said, I'm pretty sure I just quit my job. And he's like, what do you mean you're pretty sure? I'm like, I'm going to rephrase that. I just quit my job.
Yeah.
3 weeks before school started.
Yeah. Wow.
And they held up their end of the bargain. I did not lose my license. I did not have any penalties for leaving that close to the school year. They actually didn't even tell me they accepted my resignation. I read it in the board packet that they hired a new kindergarten teacher. And I was like, well, I guess I did quit my job. And then the panic set in because I was like, we were only in like year 2.5 of this 5-year plan. And so I kind of forced myself into entrepreneurship. And what I realized was that I was not really prepared for it at all. I cashed out my 401k. That I don't know if I recommend that, but we were in survival mode at that point. My husband is also self-employed. So we were without insurance. We were without any sort of safety net at all. And so I was like, okay, going all in. I'm going to coach teachers on how to not burn out. I'm going to do all the things. And it took me about 6 weeks to realize I was not the person to do that for them anymore because they were living in a world I had never been in. No matter how many years of experience I had in the classroom, I was not the right person to teach them those things anymore because I was not currently living the world they were living in. And it was a crazy one, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, well, what am I teaching these women? Who else needs these skills? Who else burns out really easily? Well, I knew from a fact of trying to build this business, be a full-time mom, being a full-time teacher, like all these things that I was teaching teachers were things I was doing in my business life also to keep me from doing those things. So I started working with women entrepreneurs and life coaching them. And it's just kind of evolved from there. But yeah, it's been a wild and crazy ride. Here we are. I'm a mompreneur now.
Sometimes we just have to have those moments, like, I don't know if you're a lot like me. I like to have the whole plan. I like to have all the details, and that's not the way the Lord works. Most times that wouldn't require any faith to do that. But I thought it was really interesting. There's a lot of people that I've been interviewing that have gone through some type of transition like that from a professional standpoint, whether they were forced, whether they just decided it was no longer serving them and they want to do something different. And whether it was you wanted to do it or you didn't want to do it, it's still hard. It's still really hard to take that first step, like into this world of unknown. Like, okay, now how is the income going to come and how am I going to be able to, is it okay for me to let go of the profession that I lived with for so many years? I mean, I was in direct selling for 15 years and the Lord called me out last year. So, I mean, that was like what I knew, but I also knew he was done. Like I had a new assignment that he had for me, but that still doesn't make it easy. And so I think, I'd love to just kind of land here just for a few minutes and talk about transition, because I know there's a lot of women that are listening right now, maybe mompreneurs or maybe someone who's working for corporate and they're trying to figure out what's next. And the transition part is the scary part, like trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do next? Or how is this going to impact my family? So I think we just need to have honest conversations about it, right? Like just how hard.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Well, and that was the thing was like, the words that came out of my mouth when I said, so what you're telling me is you're going to allow me out of my teaching contract without penalty. You're going to let me walk away right now, just like clean break. We're done. Yeah. And they said that it would get back to me. When those words came out of my mouth, that was never my intention of the meeting that I had called with them. Like I went in to sit down and talk about how we can make this adjustment period back into the classroom better for both teachers and for students. Mm-hmm. And they blindsided me with that piece of paper. And those words came out of my mouth. And I can still, like, I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. I remember that feeling so vividly that the words were coming out of my mouth, but they were not my words.
Right.
And I had like zero control over and then it was like too late to take it back. And I was like, God had such a bigger plan for me. And the thing was that I thought I had my idea of what he wanted me to do when I left the classroom, and it was to support teachers.
Yeah.
And I forced it for a really long time, and it took quite a few. I mean, I was probably 9 to 12 months, almost a full year of me fighting this before I finally got quiet enough and to listen. What is my next assignment? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Yeah. And it was funny because it's not on our timeline at all.
No, never.
I'm living proof of that.
No.
But I all I could do that whole time was take one step. So, we lived like 2 or 3 months, and then we found out that because of COVID, they were allowing us to withdraw our 401ks without penalty because COVID was happening and people were, and everything worked out so insanely planned, but not my plan. But when I take a look back, but all I can say was that I had faithfulness. I had faithfulness in the fact that those words had come out of my mouth, and that if I stayed faithful and I kept pushing and taking one step in front of the other, that plan was going to unfold, whether it was my plan or his plan, didn't matter.
Right.
All I knew is that I had to keep taking that step forward. And here I am, what are we, 3 years, 3 years later, which is insane. And my business doesn't look anything like it did when I walked away and what I thought I was going to build. And I could never have imagined where I'm at now. It's been amazing, but it's been the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I can so relate. One of the things that you said that I think is really important, especially if there are women that are listening that are trying to like push their plan. Like you said, I really thought that I was going to, help teachers. And then you realize that you were not. And as a coach, I think this is so important. Like you weren't in that space anymore. So you couldn't really speak to that space. Like when I was in the direct sales industry and I was coaching my team members, like I had to be in the trenches doing the same thing they were doing to fully understand all the emotions that go along with it and to be able to coach them through that. And so I think that was a really pivotal moment, or I think a good awareness moment for you, was that you realize I can't speak to that anymore. But how many times would we try to stay there because that's what we thought we were going to do? And you probably did for a little bit, but then you realize, wait, I can't speak to this anymore and that takes a humbleness, I think, to admit, like, I can't speak to this anymore. Yes, I was a teacher, but and you still are a teacher. When you're a coach, you're still a teacher, but you're not in that same environment. I think that sort of just says a lot about you and your humbleness and willingness to be like, okay, these aren't my people anymore.
Right. Well, and I thought, why did he have me go through all these things? Why did I become a teacher in the first place? Like, why was this my path? And the thing was that I have always been a decent communicator, but by going through, I've taught anywhere from preschool to 5th grade. I've coached high school students. I've coached and worked with other teachers within my role as a teacher. And when I look back now, it's really clear that I was put in all of those situations and did all of those things because it has made me an even more effective teacher for my purpose now. And so my husband struggled with that. And so because that's the other part of this, you're not just a solo person doing these things. Right, you have a family and you have a spouse, and he just could not. He was like, we literally still have a few $1,000s left on your student loans to pay off. And you're walking away from this career that you thought, and I had to explain to him that when I went into teaching, I knew I wasn't going to be there forever. Yeah. There was something that was telling me already, even though I was going through all the motions and doing all the things, and there was something very early on that I just knew that this wasn't my whole purpose. This wasn't going to be me. I wasn't meant to teach kindergarten for my entire life. That just was not how it was supposed to be. Right. And so that was really hard for him to understand, that I'd spent this much time investing in so many things and so many kids, and that I was just could walk away so easily from it. And honestly, you couldn't pay me $1 billion to go back. There's just 0 ounce of me that wants to go back to that. Like, I just feel like the growth and the things that I have to offer and the value that I share and all of those pieces, that I couldn't go back to a classroom and be the same teacher that I was before. I just couldn't do it.
One of the interesting things about my transition that I share with people is that, I loved what I did for 15 years. I'm sure you love what you did, as a teacher too. And that was the hardest part. I would say that the Lord was really pulling on me for at least 3 to 5 years, like trying to, get my attention and draw me out. And he literally had to just remove the desire to do that work anymore. And I think that's such a grace gift that he gave me, because that's not how it always works for some people. For some people, it's like, no, you still love it. And he's still telling you to go. And, I love the relationship. I love the people, but there were more things that I was not loving about it at that time. And now that I can look back and say, thank you, that you actually removed the desire. And you just said that, like, you couldn't pay me to go back, to that, because he's got a new desire in your heart, right? He's sparked a new interest and a new love for the same skill sets that you have and the same passion you have to teach and to train and to coach, but he's just moving you to a different platform to do that with. And I think that's the beautiful thing of faith and just being willing to go where he says go. So kudos to you.
Oh, 100%. Well, and I just think, like, you talked about it being like a humble decision to walk away from coaching teachers and stuff. And one of the things that I work most on with my clients is really knowing, I call it my VIP method, and it's knowing your values, setting intentions, and then figuring out what your actual priorities are based on your value system and your intentions. And I really had to hone in on that. And it's come up multiple times for me. So even this last fall, I told my husband, I said, who's really drawn to working with me, and I love working with them, is the moms who started a craft or a hobby during the pandemic while they were stuck at home with everybody.
Yes.
And then they built a business off of it, and now they're trying to manage, because we're full force back out living life, probably even at a faster pace than we were prior to it, and now they're trying to juggle a work at home job. They're trying to raise their kids. They're trying to be the best mom and wife that they can be. And society's telling us that we can have it all and we can do it all. But how do we do that? And so those women were coming to me, but they loved the life coaching, but all of a sudden they were like, well, you've built this business. Can you help me coach my business? And I'm like, I know how to build an online business, but I've never taken a physical product, made it in my house, gone to the vendor events, gotten it into storefronts. I have never done that process. So I felt really ill-equipped for that. And so, naturally my brain's like, okay, so maybe those aren't the women for you. And one day I woke up and I looked at my husband, I said, I'm going to start a side hustle. I'm going to start making physical products at the kitchen table. And he was like, it's a side hustle, right? I'm like, yeah, that. And we shipped out so many orders in the month of December. So that was October, and it took off around Christmas time. I had started an Etsy store and things like that, because a lot of women around where I live, they've got websites and things, but they're having a hard time getting traffic to it. And I'm like, well, let's go where the traffic is. Let's open an Etsy store. Let's figure this out. And we were shipping 20 packages a day out of our house in December, which is not like ridiculous, but having it be like an 8-week-old business, that was insane for us. We were not prepared for it. And it's just another one of those things where I had the integrity, because integrity is one of my values that I really, really hold dear to me. And it's a big part of how I run my business and how I raise my family and show up in the world. And I did not feel like I had integrity to be able to coach these women in a business area that I had not done myself. And so what was my answer? God was like, you just do it yourself. And my husband and I look at each other every day. We're like, this is insane.
What are we doing?
But we love it.
Oh, that's so awesome. So what would you say, like, your biggest lesson has been, whether it be in the transition from teaching to coaching, or just this new, physical product that you've brought onto, your kind of portfolio as a coach and business coach also, because if you're teaching people about business, you're a business coach too.
Right.
So
absolutely.
What's been like a biggest lesson that you've learned along the way?
I think that it is probably not relying on yourself to do it all. And whether that's, a lot of us think that we have to do everything ourselves. I have a VA who helps me with the coaching part of the business, because the physical product part of the business has consumed so much of my time now. And so I'm starting to rely on other people. My husband helps me pack the orders. When we met 10 years ago, I would have never dreamed of being like, yes, you work on the farm all day from, 6 a.m. until 5 or 6 p.m. And then you come home and you help me pack orders. But we just know that this is just the season that we're in. Yeah. And for now, we need to rely on each other to do this. But at the same time, I think that a lot of coaches are preaching, like, you have everything inside of you. to make this happen, manifest it, do all this stuff. When in reality, I've never had those feelings. And my business took off when I gave it all to God. And I asked him to show me where I needed to be instead of relying on myself to make it all happen. And I think that that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned, is that it's okay to accept help no matter where it's from.
Yeah. And you need it way sooner than you think you need it. Delegate like ASAP. Like if you don't have someone helping you right now and you're a mompreneur, and you have some free help right there in your house, probably. That's what I tell my clients all the time. Like, you have kids that are sitting there on their electronics. If they can use their iPad, they know how to push a broom. Just saying. They know how to push them off. They know how to run the dishwasher.
Exactly. Well, even so one of the things I make is those frosted can glasses with the bamboo lids, and I sublimate on them, and stuff. And so when I get big orders of those, I'm like, all right, come over here. I need you guys to count out 35 cups for me, okay. And then they take them out of the box and they take the bubble wrap off them. They open them up, they take the lid off, they stack the lids, they are helpful. And I am not a finances person at all. And I'm still learning all the things, but we just had our tax meeting. Did you know you can pay your kids? An insane amount of money where you don't have to pay, pay the Social Security and all those kind of things on it. As long as you can prove they're doing the work for you, and he's like, and what that looks like is getting out a calendar and writing down how many hours they work, for you, and justifying it. And you set a wage for them and stuff. And so he was like, my oldest two are 6 and 7. So I've got 3 girls. I have a 3, a 6, and a 7-year-old. So we're busy. We're in the thick of it, as young parents. And those older two, even my 3-year-old loves to take those glasses out of the boxes, or loves to help me package the bath salts that we make, or, do all the little tiny things. And not only is it investing them in the process, it's showing them that this is important, and we get to go on that vacation, or we get to be in dance. And there is no limit to the amount of dance classes I can take, because mommy is doing the work, and this is why she's doing it. And we're very clear on that, because that's part of those intentions and those values that we hold, is instilling those in our kids, and that we're not just working to work. We're working for our quality of life, and that we take time to rest. But when it's time to work, it's time to work, and I think that that's also something that I've really learned to involve our kids in it and share with them the why and the reasoning that we do what we do. And that's been really empowering for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's a family business. And I think when you include them in there, it helps. At least it helped me with the mom guilt. And because I'm like, okay, they know that we're doing this because they have things they want to go and do. We have things we want to do, and, be generous in ways we want to be generous, and then have family, times and things that they want to do. And me being able to go to the school whenever they needed me, or I have a child that's homesick today. And so because I'm an entrepreneur, I have that opportunity to do that. I'll have to ask off when I have a sick child. So it's just like you said, continuing to remind them of those things. But I think for me, especially my husband, because I know a lot of mompreneurs have struggled with getting their husbands on board, but really just asking them to be your business partner, and asking them, this is the gift that you have in the biz. My husband's a numbers guy, he's a systems guy. And so he helps me in that way, with systems. And he can put together a system like this where it would take me a little bit longer to go through that whole process. But just inviting them, not assuming they want to be, but inviting them into the business in that way, and inviting your children into it. I think it's a mindset shift first for us as the mompreneurs, but then it's also just cultivating that type of community in your home, that we work hard and we play hard, we work hard together and we play hard together.
Absolutely. Well, and that's something that we've been struggling with, that balance. And I'm not a firm believer in a work-life balance at all. Your work is a huge part of your livelihood and your life. And there's no reason to find a perfect balance between the two. And there's going to be seasons for both. But back in December, we live in a rural area. We live in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. We have a few towns within 20 miles of us and stuff, but our kids have always gone to daycare in the neighboring town, and that daycare closed permanently in December. They can't get anybody to work at it. And so now my oldest two ride the bus in the morning, they ride the bus home, and that's awesome. But my 3-year-old goes to preschool for a few hours in the morning, 4 days a week. And then she's home with me in the afternoons now. Whereas She used to just go to daycare right after preschool,
Right.
those 4 days a week. And I would have a full day to work. And so that's been a huge adjustment, is how do I actually, I'm now a stay-at-home mom most of the day and a work from home mom. And what does that look like for us and stuff? And it's been involving my cute new little employee in a lot of the business aspects that I never in a million years thought that a 3-year-old would be involved in. But man, packing peanuts go a long way with a 3-year-old, let me tell you.
It's like having your own fun ball pit right there in the house, right?
Yes, exactly. She cooks with them in her little kitchen. Like, we ended up setting up my workshop right down in the basement. We took half of their side of the playroom and set up my stuff so that she just plays right alongside me, and she brings me food and I pretend to eat it and do all the things. And it's been an adjustment. And there are days where I don't get anything done until after they've gone to bed. And that's okay, because I am always going to be mom first. And that's just the season of life that we're in for the next couple of years until she starts full-time school. So
and it'll go by so fast. I mean, I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I'm in complete denial that, I mean, my 18-year-old was 1 when I became an entrepreneur. And it's just crazy that he's just been with me from the very beginning, and it goes by so fast. So I know they say don't blink, and I always thought, yeah, whatever. Days are long. They're long when you have little.
They are so long.
They're so long, but the years are short, I'm telling you. So kudos to you for what you just said. Like, you're a mom and you're a wife first, and the business comes second to that. Hey, friend. So you have been trying to make some shifts this year. Maybe you set some resolutions and you're just feeling stuck. You don't feel like you're making progress, or you're just not sure what to do. And you've heard me say this before, but being stuck is a mindset, not a position. And this is where a coach comes in to support you. Because here's what I know to be true about you, friend. If you could have done it alone, you would have already done it, period. And as a life coach and a certified PDP professional, I specialize in using a research-based personality and performance survey called the ProScan to illuminate how your unique personality and natural strengths, your work and life environments are influencing real-time performance. So here's what you need to do. Go to the link in the show notes and book your free clarity call to learn more about how I can support you in your goals. I can't wait to illuminate your strengths, cultivate your confidence, and elevate your life. So I think, did I see that you just did like a time management type of boot camp or something like that?
Yeah,
so
yes.
We're kind of talking. Yes, since we're sitting here talking about that, like I know there's a mompreneur that's listening, going like, she's shaking her head. Yes, I have a child that's now home, or I have, what are some helpful tips you can give them when it comes to managing their time and goal setting and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So it all goes back to that VIP method that I talked about before. Okay. If you have not sat down and actually identified words that are your values, then you're going to struggle with it, because you're not going to be able to make decisions based on those values. So for me, integrity, I talked about that one. Abundance is one of mine. And most people in the entrepreneur world are like, yeah, everybody wants an abundance of money. That's the point of being an entrepreneur. But for me, it's more of, I want an abundance of time. I want an abundance of love. I want an abundance of experiences for my family. So you have to know exactly why those words stick out to you and really deep dive into it. Like, what is it that I want to portray in this world, and to give my kids, like, it's like a gift to them that you're giving them. Think about all the things you've gotten from your parents, good, bad, otherwise. Right. Yeah. But if you're intentional with those values, then all of a sudden so I used to volunteer for our church. This is a great example of it. I am very tech savvy because I've built an online business and I've learned a lot of things over the years. So when the pandemic hit, we moved into having Sundays, service online and needing a website and doing all these things. And so they were like, well, who can do that? You can. And I was like, sure. Yeah. And eventually I had to walk away, because even though like stewarding my church and my faith and everything like that is important to me, my values and my intentions for this season of my life was not to give up my business to run the church is everything. Right. And so then it became, okay, now I'm going to train other people to do these things so that I'm not the only person that knows how to do it all. Am I still there when they need somebody? Absolutely. And I will always do that for them. But I had to step away because they had started paying me. Like it became a job, and so it wasn't just like hey, let's get this started. Now it was like a paid employee of the church.
And an expectation that you had on yourself, probably because you like to serve, but they were like, well, wait a minute, you've always done this. So aren't you going to always do this?
Yes, exactly. And so it was one of those things where I had to like sit down and be really honest with myself. Is doing this aligning with the other things that God has laid on my heart? Or was I supposed to get it started and then learn to walk away from it? Was that something that I was supposed to learn through this process, And so when you're starting to think of time management, we struggle with boundaries and we want to say yes. And we feel like my church is an important part of my life. But like I feel guilty if I don't do these things. But the thing was to take a look at it and say, okay, what is God really wanting me to do in this situation? Or what am I really supposed to get out of this scenario that I'm in? And when I relied back on my values and what was important to me and what had been laid on my heart and really got honest with myself, I knew that had to go because I still needed to be able to show up for my kids on their field trips. I couldn't do that as a teacher. That was part of the reason why I walked away, because my mom and my husband were the ones going on all the field trips and chaperoning all the things and showing up for parents in the classroom activities, because I wasn't allowed to leave my own class to go do it. And, so what's important to me, showing up and being there for my kids. My youngest had her tonsils out last month. My oldest two go in next week and have their tonsils out. Let me tell you, it's been a year. I could not be the parent that I want to be from, throughout all of the sickness that they've had. Has it been a burden and has it exhausted me? And am I ready for it to be done? 100%. But I used to have to rely on my mom or my husband to leave work to do these things. And so when I got really clear on my values and what I wanted to instill in my kids and in my business and in my life, that really allowed me to understand where my priorities should be, what goals I need to set, where I need to spend my time. And if it doesn't align with those, there's no guilt anymore. I brush my hands of it and I walk away because it's not part of the bigger plan at this moment. That doesn't mean it won't be later on and that things won't change. Now that I've learned to run my business while my daughter's home with me, when she goes to school, I might find myself going, I have all this extra time. Let's go there. That probably won't happen. But, if it does,
it will. But more time doesn't mean we're more productive. That's one thing I learned because I was the same way. I couldn't wait I remember my peers, their kids were older and they'd had like this huge, like from 9 to 3 chunk of time. And I thought, oh my goodness, that would be so amazing. Because I was working my business in the nooks and crannies of time around nap times and around all these things. And as soon as I got it, I'm like, okay, I've got all this time. But it still doesn't make you as productive if you don't have your plan, right? And you still don't, if you don't know your priorities and you don't know, okay, what do I really need to spend my time doing, with this extra time. So it is a weird feeling, but you'll have to be just as disciplined as you are now.
Yes, exactly. Almost more because you have that choice. And so I struggled with that right away too. When the kids were at daycare and I had all day, I was like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And so that was when I really started diving into those things, and figuring out, okay, so this is my big goal for my business. I only set one big goal, whether that's a revenue goal or an amount of women I want to reach in a year or whatever it is. And then I work it backwards and I say, okay, but what's going to get me to that goal? What do I need to do? Not necessarily, it's hard to say like, I need to do this every month and then I need to do this every day. And that means I need to make X amount of money every hour because we know that business doesn't run like that, Yeah. And so for me, it's okay. What are the steps I need to take to generate that revenue or that income? I need to show up on podcasts. I need to interview people on my own podcast. I need to show up on social media. I need to keep blogging. I need to do things. That's what's getting me out there. That's what's giving me exposure. And so then I think, okay, perfect. Now I know what I need to do. And then when I build my weekly plan, my goals then are like, okay, I want to reach out to 3 different podcasts this week and either book them on mine or get booked on theirs, and when you work it all the way backwards like that, it really fills up your time in a lot more efficient way than just staring at your calendar and being like, well, I know I need to pin a bunch of pins this month. Like super.
Well, it helps you. I mean, when you kind of go through like your VIP method, then your yeses can be yes and your no's can be no's. And I think
Yes.
as women, it's really hard when we say yes in the moment because we either have people pleasing syndrome or, it's just what we've always done. We've always been the yes girl. So we're just going to continue to be the yes girl. But then, you're going to have to go back and tell that person because you only have so much room on your plate. Then you have to go back and tell that person, well, no, I can't. That's horrible. That's a horrible feeling. Like let your yes be yes and your no be no. And for those of you that struggle with saying no, it just takes practice. If you're used to being the yes girl, it's not going to happen overnight, but you can say no and be a nice girl. Like it doesn't make you a mean person for saying no. And I feel like if I could stand on the mountaintops and just shout something, that would be one of the things that I would want to say because people just think, well, saying no means I'm being selfish, and it's not. It's not. It means you're honoring your own priorities.
Exactly. And that's exactly what came to my mind when you said that was that guilt. And it gets easier to say no when you do have crystal clear priorities because there's a Instagram guru. His name's Brock Johnson. I don't know if you've heard of him at all. Yeah. And his mom, Shailene, they're all over and they do all the things. But I remember him talking a couple of years ago about this little tiny piece of paper that he carries in his pocket, and it's got names on it. It's got his sisters, his mom's, his dad, and his fiance's name on it. Mm-hmm. And he runs every decision he makes past those 4 priorities. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't directly affect them, then he has no problem saying no to it if it doesn't feel like it fits in with, because those are his priorities. And so I always tell my clients, like, take it a step further. What are your business priorities? What are your non-negotiables? And then what are your family and your personal ones? And if it doesn't align with those in this moment, that's okay. The opportunity, if it's meant to be, will pop up again. And you can, and you have the chance to take it at another time, but really knowing what's important right now is kind of the key to managing that time.
Yeah, because no right now doesn't mean no never. And I think that's it's kind of that all or nothing mentality. Well, if I say no to her now, it means I have to say no to her forever or to that opportunity. And that's just not the case. That's what keeps us in yes mode. It's like, well, no, I just got to keep saying yes, because if I don't, I'm going to miss this opportunity. Well, an opportunity missed.
It's like a scarcity mindset. We think that this opportunity is only going to come one time, and it may, and you're much more at peace when you know that this was not the time for that, and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. So since we're kind of talking about honoring priorities and schedules and all of those things, burnout is something that is an epidemic. I truly believe that. And it's almost like it's just been accepted. And I don't know if you have noticed just by following other, like, Shailene and Brock, and just in the online business world, I feel like they're finally starting to understand that it's not hustle 365, 24/7. I don't know. I'm just starting to see more messages, and messaging like you can, have a successful business without, sacrificing your priorities. And I feel like I've been preaching this since like 2018, 2019. So it's very encouraging to me to see more of those people stepping up and saying that. But it happens. Burnout happens. And I know it's experienced by people in different ways, shows up differently for different people. So I always like to ask my guests who come on if they've experienced burnout. And if you have, like, what did it feel like for you physically, emotionally, spiritually? Like, how did it feel? And then how did you kind of work your way out of it?
Absolutely. So in the business world, I haven't really experienced it, I guess I would say. But as a teacher, I was 100% burned out by the time I walked away. And that was what had led me to start working on teachers with that. So I think by the time I got into the business aspect of it, I had the systems and the things in place to overcome it. Because by the end of my teaching career, I was pretty good, I'd kind of come out of burnout and that kind of thing. But it is something. I was short-tempered. I couldn't focus. I had to I was so like, I could only think of one thing at a time. I could only do what was right in front of me. I couldn't even fathom thinking of other things or next steps or having a plan, or it was fight or flight all the time. Yeah. And it never turned off. I would leave the classroom. I would go home and I would be touched out from kindergartners all day. I had small children and I would be like, please don't touch mommy. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But I was just at that brink every single time. And I was pregnant with our third. I remember sitting on the couch and Googling, this story sounds so sad, but I promise it has a happy ending. But I remember like Googling rehabs for pregnant moms for exhaustion, because, celebrities claim that they go to rehab for air quotes around exhaustion. But I was like, is that a thing? Are there really rehabs, or is this just complete BS that they're spewing to people? Turns out they're real places. And so then I was like, well, does insurance cover it? Because I can't afford this on my own. It's just the thing. And as I was sitting there, and I remember thinking like how amazing it would feel to just like wake up one day and just be by myself and like get to do whatever I wanted to do for like a week at a time. And not have to worry about who was taking care of my kids, or who needed a snack, or 24 other people's kids in my classroom that I took home with me on my heart every single night, Could I just walk away, and would I be able to just turn that all off for like a week? But what I realized was that when I came back, nothing else was going to have changed. Like, cool, I would maybe be a little less tired for that next week.
Right.
But if things didn't change here in the life that I was living, it was never it didn't matter how long I stayed somewhere else. It was never going to be enough. And so I, at the time, was super pregnant, was super uncomfortable. I told my husband, I was like, because he works 6.5 days a week. We feed cattle. We do all the things. Like he works all the time. I told him, I was like, I need you to go feed them early, and I need you to come home, and you're going to take care of the two littles. And I'm going to sit in this chair and I'm going to read a book, because I'm the type of person where like, when I start a book, I want to finish it. I've learned to not do that now, but at the time that was my reading style, and I hadn't read a book in years because of it. And so I sat in that chair and I read a book, and it was, actually, it's probably in the stack of books next to me, but it's How to Get Shit Done. Because I thought if I learned how to get more stuff done, that was the key. Well, it wasn't. I mean, but what that book taught me was that I needed that time to build these things that I actually enjoyed back into my life, to bring joy to my everyday, because that was what was going to keep me out of that fight or flight mode that I was constantly in. And so that was how it all started. Then I started focusing on, how do I build this as a part of my routine? And then that was how I may or may not be ADHD. My friends claim I am, but I did not know it until like the last year. And so I might get a little bit of that hyper focus going. And so then I was like, oh, this is new, and this is fun. So my brain was like, let's learn all the things. So I started implementing, morning routines, nightly routines, family routines. And what I found was that through this process, each day got a little bit easier. And I found a little bit more peace and a little bit more joy in my day. And having open communication with my husband, that the grind that we were doing couldn't continue, that we needed these pieces in our day. And the amount of enjoyment we have in our lives right now, a lot of people are like, well, it's because you left the classroom and you're your own boss, and you have all this freedom, and you whatever. And I'm like, the fact that we've been broke for 3 years while I've built this business, because I've had to pivot as many times as I did. And, all of those things, people don't see that. And you would think that would break a normal person to know that, I've taken out a business loan and I've done this stuff, and we're in debt, and we have these things that we're now able to climb our way out of. But for a year and a half or so, that was a struggle that would have broke anybody. But we just kept pushing through it and had zero burnout in the process, because we knew our priorities. We knew the end. We knew that if we kept doing the things and we stayed the course, that it was going to change. And we trusted in that. And we had that faith, and we, dove into our relationship with the Lord and in the Bible, and doing things that we were Christians before, but the spirituality that we have now, and the, things that we do now are completely different than what we did 5 years ago. And I think that it's just, we think that we need a quick fix to it, but it all started with a book, and it started with reading a book one day. And then adding another book and then adding another book. And within 6 months, then all of a sudden these other pieces had come along with reading a book as a part of a routine.
Right.
And now 5 years later, this is what life looks like, but it was because we were intentionally started it years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's hard for people is they want that quick fix and they want it now. And if I can just work out and I can eat right and I can do this and I drink more water, life's got to get better. Right. Yeah. And they do it for a month because they can sustain it. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, clearly I am not the kind of person who can do these things.
Right.
And it's having that priority of every day, I'm just going to get up and I'm going to do a little bit better, and allowing it to compound and build on itself. And knowing that you might go through a season where you start a physical product business that you weren't anticipating and the working out goes away for 3 months, and that's okay because you're prioritizing your rest and your mental health, and the physical health is going to come back when it becomes a priority. You don't have to do all the things all the time. And the routine doesn't have to stay the same for every day of your entire life. It can ebb and flow as your business grows and you have those pain points, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So much in that information. I know that listeners are probably writing furiously. I'm not going to try to say that word again, but y'all know what I'm trying to say. And they'll probably have to go back and listen to it because there were so many good nuggets that you said in there. And I do think seasons come and seasons go. And if you can keep that mindset that this is a season that I'm in, how can I make the most of the season that I'm in? What's important right now in this season? Yes. It's so freeing. I think we do. I talked about this on the last episode, was this all or nothing mentality. And that really can keep you stuck. It can really keep you from feeling like you're making progress. Just changes a lot of things when you choose to think, okay, well, it's going to be like this forever. No, you're not going to have sleepless nights forever. Your babies do grow up.
It seems like you will, but I promise it does.
I know it does. Someone right now is rolling their eyes at me that's nursing a baby as they're listening to this. They're like, but you don't understand.
At 2 a.m.
Yeah, I promise I understand. Yeah, right. They're listening to this at 2 a.m. They are for sure. So what are you most excited about right now speaking of seasons that you're in?
Yes. I think a part of me is that I've always known that I could do this and that I could be an entrepreneur, and I've wanted to be one since I was little. I watched my dad build a business from the ground up, but he never gave up his full-time job. And so for me, like the courage to walk away and do this full time and struggle, but knowing that I could actually do this, and now seeing the fruits of the labor that I've put in over the last few years and how it's kind of compounding on itself and just continuing to grow every single day is one of those things where I'm not a patient person. And you see people build businesses, and some of them, it seems to grow pretty quickly for them. They hit 6 figures in their first year, or they do this or they do that. But to know, there's a guy I follow on Instagram, another marketing guy, his name's Monty Woodward. And he talks about how he walked away from a 6-figure job. He had multiple months worth of salary set aside to start and grow this business. And he still ended up couch surfing from friends and family for years and withdrawing his 401k. And he's like, those are the things that nobody talks about, like, it may take you 18 years to build your business like it did my dad. If you just do it slowly and surely and you stay motivated with it. But you can also, you can make those sacrifices and grow it more quickly and do the things, but it's also not going to happen as fast as we ever want it to.
No.
And the thing is that when it does blow up and it happens overnight, you're not prepared for it. And then you have other struggles. So you have to pick your hard. And that's kind of what I live and die on, is you have to pick your hard.
Yeah.
And, knowing the season of life that you're in determines what hard you're going to pick. And that's where those priorities and those values come into play in that as well. And people, I think I'm nuts when I'm like, that's what I rely on, but it really makes a huge difference in the whole process.
Well, learning to wake up every day and just celebrate where you are, because you're not where you used to be. You may not be where you want to be, but you're not where you used to be. And so I think if you can learn to do that every single day and be grateful, there's always something to be grateful for. And it's hard to be grateful and be complaining at the same time. So starting your day with that and just realizing that it's a journey and it's a process. And the other thing I think we all saw with the pandemic, just how precious life is and how quickly life can change. And so if you're constantly looking so far down the line at where you want to be and where you're not at, then it's really hard to celebrate and embrace the moments that you have right now with your children and with your spouse and with your business and the clients that you're working with right now. So I just think that, yes, we should dream, and yes, we should look forward. But if it's making you feel like, comparison, and you're comparing your journey to someone else's journey, because we're really good at that, especially on social. We're comparing the highlight reel, our behind the scenes, to everyone else's highlight reel. And, there are very, very, very few overnight successes. So don't go there. Exactly. Don't allow yourself to go there. There is a mess before that success. There are years probably of hard work and years of struggles and years of working through their own junk to get to where they are today. So I think I try, and I've seen you too, just be very transparent on social and on our podcast about the struggles, because then the more I'm willing to take my mask off and share my struggles, the more willing some other mompreneur is going to be able to do the same. And that's what we need. We need more real people showing up saying, this is hard. It's so much easier to go punch a clock. I'm just saying it is
100%.
I'm not saying, now punching a clock as a teacher, I don't know, because I feel like you do take home a lot. You take home the kids, and you just have this sense of responsibility. But anyway, it's all hard. Like you said, you're going to choose your heart, and we need our teachers, and we need our entrepreneurs. We need everyone to step up and be in their zone of genius and be in their gifts, and don't hide them, but bring them to light and use them to impact others. And that's what you're doing.
Oh,
so I appreciate
absolutely. It. Oh, thank you. Yes. It's just, it goes back to that value of having integrity. And, I wish someone had told me, because I watched a teacher build her business. She's fabulous, but she's the first course that I bought into. And she was like, if you do this, if you blog, if you do this, and you podcast, and you do this, and she had like this whole framework for you to follow. If you do this, then you're going to find success. Well, the thing was that, she was having 6-figure launches of this course that she was selling, because she was teaching other teachers how to dream big and to get out of the classroom, which that's what a lot of teachers are looking for. And B, she was successful in Teachers Pay Teachers and had replaced her teaching income, probably almost doubled her teacher income on Teachers Pay Teachers, and had built this following and these relationships and connections with teachers, teaching them teaching stuff first. And so then she was like, okay, now come along with me on this journey. And so even though it looked like it was an overnight success, people saw it, but it was hard to put that connection together, that these same teachers that have been following her for 5, 6, 7 years, now coming on this new journey with her. And then me personally, I was so frustrated, because I would launch and I'd be like, cool, I made $1,000. That is not going to get me out of the classroom anytime soon, you know? Yeah. And so I found myself being really frustrated by the process. And so one of the things, that comparison thing was hard for me. And I'm a big dreamer. Like I can look at somebody else's business and I can tell you exactly the steps that you should do to get to like bigger than you could have dreamed yourself. I'll dream it for you, because that's my superpower.
Right. Yeah.
But I was having a hard time like reining that in for myself and not just seeing the big end result. I struggled to know what pieces and steps to take to get in between there. And that was when I had to start focusing on me and that one step. What am I going to do today to get me one step closer? Okay, now what am I going to do? And every day I woke up with that same mindset. What am I going to do today that gets me just one step closer? I know we like to say the 1%, but I think that's really hard. Yeah. What is 1%? What's 1% of my day or of my business or of my whatever, what's 1% better? I don't really know what that means, but for me to put it in, like, if I just take one step forward. So today I made some pins and I got into my Pinterest VA that, just schedules them for me and does all the nitty gritty that I don't need to do, but I make the pins and I pick the blog post that it goes with. I did that today. That was my one step forward today. I knew that was my priority today. I needed to get it done. And now everything else is just like a bonus.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I just think that one of the things on social media, we see that highlight reel. And what I had to do is I had to unfollow anybody that gave me that twinge of like,
Yeah.
They may be great people and they may be teaching amazing things, but if it was bringing up that emotion in me where it made me feel less inferior to them, or like less adequate, or like I wasn't doing enough, or my business wasn't growing fast enough, they had to go. I had to get rid of them. I did the same thing on Facebook because I kept Facebook for my business, is what I kept telling myself. I only have Facebook because I run my business on there, Right. And what I ended up having to do is I have like 1,100 friends on there, and I unfollowed every single one of them except for my husband. They're all still friends. I can still go follow them and I can go check out what they're doing if I intentionally set aside the time to go and do it. But when I log on to Facebook now, all I see is the stuff that is absolutely pertinent to my business. Yeah. And I don't see that highlight reel anymore of other people and what they're doing and the vacations they're taking and the things that they're doing. Yeah. Like I intentionally have made Facebook just for business because that's what I needed to be able to focus on my priorities and what's important to me. I think it's important to surround yourself with women who are cheering you on and doing all the things and being that person for other women too. But there has to be that line that you can draw for yourself where when's enough, and how am I going to intentionally show up and be this person without having to consume everybody else's everything. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever you have to do, I say to protect your peace, protect your mindset. Like I protect my mindset fiercely. Like I protect it like I protect my children, like I just, cause I know how important, how easy it is for me in my mind, if I'm not doing that. And so it's not like trying to say, positive Polly, whatever, but I do protect my mind very fiercely on what I let in, what I see, who I'm around, and social media. That was such a good point, for you to bring up, and unfollow anybody that makes you feel like you need to be someone that you're not, or that you don't want to be, or makes, like you said, just that, because we all have it. And we all have that, when we see somebody and they're doing something, it just kind of brings up an emotion. And if you're feeling that, this is your permission slip from me and Marissa to just unfollow. Doesn't mean forever. Just unfollow for a season until you get past that and you're able to look at that and not feel that feeling anymore. So thank you for bringing that up. Well, this was super fun. Thank you so much for coming on. And just as a close, if there was one thing you could share with mompreneurs, if you had just a few minutes with them, what's one thing you'd want them to know? Oh my gosh. I feel like we've just talked about all the things. I would say it's just showing up and being true to yourself and putting in the work, just that one step at a time, and being patient, as hard as it is, because like I said, I am not a patient person, but it's something that I've had to learn. And it was like, as soon as I slowed down, my growth sped up. Yep. And every time I take that time to slow down and get intentional and reconnect with my values and my priorities, then all of a sudden I have that growth spurt. Yeah. And so I would say that anytime that you're feeling like you're stuck or things are not growing the way you want them to, just really sit down, reevaluate where you're at, where you want to go, and what you need to do to get there, and then go to work. Yeah. Yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, where can people connect with you? What's the best place to connect with you? Absolutely. So Instagram is kind of my favorite place to be. And you can find me at lifecoach_Marissa, and come say hi, hit me up at my DMs. I love meeting new friends. Yeah. Well, awesome. We'll put that and any other links, for anything that she's offering, in the show notes for everyone. And thank you again so much for coming on and just giving such a vulnerable and honest conversation on mompreneur life. And I really appreciate it. Oh, thank you so much for having me. All right, friends, I will catch you on the next episode. You know that I am believing in you always. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link. Share this episode or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.